Have you ever had someone say to you, hold your tongue? Have you ever had someone say to you, hold your tongue? Now we know that's just a figure of speech. It's not supposed to be taken literally. It means stop talking. Don't say another word. Well, Solomon has a few words to say about holding your tongue. One of the steps towards wisdom is learning when to hold your tongue and keep your mouth shut. Our proverb for the day is Proverbs chapter 10, verse 19. When there are many words, trouble is likely to happen, but the one who holds his tongue is wise. We're going to be talking about the fine art of discretion, learning where and when to keep your mouth shut. Have you ever said something and then you wished, I wish I hadn't said that? It's like the old joke. Preacher in a church service, he's encouraging everybody in the service. I want you to testify. I want you to stand up and I want you to shout out loud one of the sins from your past. No longer there. We're going to celebrate the sins that are gone. Well, they start off slow, but before you know it, everybody takes a turn. They stand up and they shout, there's this. Amen, brother, that sin is gone. And there's that. And as they're calling out, one guy calls out something and a dead stop. And the preacher says, brother, I don't think I'd have said that out loud. You know, there are times when you and I have been in that position. We've said something we probably shouldn't have said out loud. You know what that feels like. You've already said it. It's already been heard. Impressions have already been made. Reactions have begun. And it's too late to take it back. Now, you know, that can happen to the best of us. But if you let it happen too often, then Solomon is going to call you a fool. Solomon says, fools multiply words. There are some people that just don't have enough good sense to know when to stop talking. Now let me ask you this. What's worse than saying something that you wish you hadn't said? It's when you try to explain away what you said and you just keep digging that hole deeper and deeper and deeper. You know, that's a good time for you just to tell yourself, hey, shut up already before you get yourself in more trouble. Solomon says, the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint. You've heard the expression that less is sometimes more. That certainly can be true in our conversation, that sometimes saying less is better than saying more. Think before you speak. Hey, that's an old proverb that many of us know. Think before you speak. Think about what it is you want to say and how best to say it. It'll spare you a whole lot of trouble. Now, while that's good advice all by itself, Solomon adds to it an extra element. Solomon says, think before you speak and don't say everything that you're thinking. Now, that's the wisdom of discretion, of restraint, of holding your tongue. Now, a good example of that is when we're talking about someone who's not present, someone who's not there, but we're talking about them anyway. Here's what Solomon says, do not speak against the king in your private quarters. Don't curse the high and mighty in your bedroom. Now here you are, you're in your private setting. They're not here. They can't hear what you're saying. You ought to feel free to say anything you want to say to your friends. Solomon says don't do that. And why not? Because a bird in the sky may carry your words and report what you say. You've heard that expression, a little birdie told me. It comes from Solomon. That is, you're saying something you think they'll never hear. But before you know it, somebody tells somebody who tells somebody, and they hear about it, and they take offense. See, that's the problem when talking about someone who's not there. They might hear what you say and be offended. Now, we call this talking behind someone's back. We'll usually rationalize it by saying, well, I wasn't really saying anything that was all that bad. But I'm going to give you a good rule of thumb. Don't say something about someone else that you wouldn't want repeated to them. Keep in mind that little bird who might tell them. Don't say what you don't want repeated. A word to the wise then from Solomon. He who speaks against his neighbor lacks good sense, but a man of understanding keeps his mouth shut. Now, on the other hand, what if it's not you talking about someone else, but someone else talking about you? And you've heard what they said, and you've been offended. Now, how do you deal with those kind of situations? Here's advice from Proverbs. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the wise person will overlook an insult. You hear that you've been offended, you've been insulted. It's easy to react, and it even shows on your face. It shows in your manner. It may show in the words you say next. You know what Solomon advises? A wise person will just overlook the insult. He'll let it go. You know, we do have the expression, oh, that's just water off a duck's back. In other words, yeah, I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to let it bother me. Folks, that's actually a pretty good idea for dealing with all the things that people say. Sometimes intentionally mean, sometimes just foolish and stupid things. It doesn't matter. Just let it go, like water off a duck's back. That's a word to the wise. Let it go. Now, I'll give you another example. What about inappropriate humor? You know, there are times we say something, we intend it to be funny. We take little cuts, little digs. We just say something for fun. And yet you could look at someone there in your audience and realize, oh, they're not laughing. You could look at a person you may have been poking fun at, and they're not laughing. And there's times a joke is said that really was inappropriate to be said by people like us. You see, there's times when we do inappropriate humor. Well, Solomon speaks about that as well. Solomon says it's like a madman shooting flaming arrows. That's the one who deceives his neighbor by saying, well, I was only joking. In other words, you did what you did, should have known before you did it, that was dangerous. And after it was done and you see the harm that it caused, you try to write it off as, hey, I was just kidding. But listen, I was just kidding doesn't undo the damage that was done. It just doesn't work that way. Now, folks, I love a good sense of humor. A good sense of humor is wonderful. It helps to spice up our personality, makes us more fun to be around each other. We enjoy a good laugh. But humor can be a tricky thing to do right. And sometimes we learn the hard way when we have crossed the line. Well, we've probably all been there, and hopefully you learn your lesson one time. It doesn't take twice. So let me just give you a word to the wise. Beware of humor that offends someone who's listening. You always got to watch for the clues that what I said I shouldn't have said. I'm not doing that again. Also, beware of humor that makes you look bad. You may have gotten a good laugh, but upon reflection you realize I may not have presented myself very well. They may now have a bad impression of me. You got to watch out for those kind of things. And listen, don't assume that what you say to your close friends is going to stay in that circle and go nowhere else. I mean, that's what we'll sometimes say. Yeah, I get a little bit loose when I'm around my friends, but it's just with my friends. Nobody else knows. Don't forget Solomon's little birdie. Because somebody tells somebody who tells somebody, and before you know it, you got a problem. You got to be careful, even with your humor. So a word to the wise. Think before you speak, and don't say every funny thing that you're thinking. How about this? Speaking ill of others. You know, we have an expression, don't speak ill of the dead. Perhaps it would be a good idea to expand that to the living as well. You've got to be careful about what you say about those who are less fortunate than yourselves. Solomon says, he who mocks the poor shows disrespect to the Maker. Now, definitely you don't want to make fun of those who are less fortunate. I mean, even the law of Moses had a rule that said there's no mocking the blind, the deaf, the mute. You don't make fun of people with their disabilities and their hardships. So that was just simply a law. But I'm also advising be careful with critical comments, even if they're true, be careful. You see, we might want to comment on how a person got into the state that they're in, the poor choices they made, the bad decisions that they're still making. Now, those may be true, but I do advise caution in saying such things. You know, thinking it is one thing. Saying it out loud is another. And I would advise you, don't say everything that you're thinking. Keep some of it to yourself. That same proverb goes on to say, he who rejoices at another's calamity will not go unpunished. You know, sometimes you've got a person who gets a hard time, and it's what they deserve. I mean, they asked for it because of choices they made, things they did, and now it's coming back on them. Be careful. Be careful what you say when people get what's coming to them. Even if they deserve it, I advise, let's not celebrate it. You see, gloating just simply looks bad on Christians. It doesn't give us the right appearance. So if you got to do anything at all, Make it a little bit of a discreet smirk with no comment, and maybe you can get away with that and enjoy just a little bit of satisfaction of seeing someone who did wrong get what their wrong deserves. Learning to hold your tongue, that's a major step toward becoming wise. As Proverbs says, even fools appear to be wise when they keep silent and hold their tongue. My advice to you today, think before you speak and don't say everything that you're thinking.